She will talk about nowcasting in the case of public health. Please.
Yep. So thank you very much. So let me give you a brief glance on the research we do on probabilistic nowcasting and forecasting for infectious diseases. So just to set the scene, what I will be talking about and what I won't be talking about. Here you see a graph of hospitalization incidence, and this is just the truth values. And we have the problem with when we work in public health that we have massive reporting delays, and even if the delays are not so severe, we have like a data quality issue. So the last values that you see here are usually sort of not correct, and you would be interested in statistically correcting them. And that's usually not just done as a point value, but with some uncertainty. And then we are interested at this point in time to actually look at forecasts for short time horizons. We think of up to 4 weeks ahead. Well, this justifies like using machine learning-based tools or statistical tools and not looking into model-based scenario-type things. And then what we will be looking at is actually multiple models, not just your one favorite model, but actually collecting several of those models and processing them to find to use the heterogeneity to come up with an overall best for informing decision makers. So the overall best we call the ensemble, and then as statisticians we are interested in systematically evaluating how well we have performed or how well this overall ensemble and the individual models have performed. And so now the slide is pretty full, so sorry for that. So there is some value in looking at this multi-model approach. We can contextualize single models. So we put a framework and we can sort of understand what each model is contributing. We can quantify that, we can check the forecast quality, and we can form an ensemble. And while we are doing that, we will also want to have an exchange among the modeling groups, not just everybody in a silo. And the way we do this is by building a platform, the so-called forecast hub, as you see here on the bottom. I can't point, so you have to kind of look at the very bottom. So we built a platform, an infrastructure that facilitates this, in particular in real time. Yeah, that people can submit their forecasts over time, and that we are collecting this systematically and make this available over time, store the history, and display it visually, make it accessible also for the public. Yeah? What we have done is we built, in particular for the respiratory disease part, we have now built the RespiNow hub. So this is to facilitate now and short-term forecasting jointly in one hub, 4 weeks back and 4 weeks ahead. And we have done this with the help of some collaborators. These are the main groups that are submitting models for the now and forecasting task, and this is how the platform looks like. This is the surface. So you see in the black solid line the truth evolution. You see in the gray shaded version the nowcast that is correcting the present values, and the green is marking the forecast and the shaded uncertainty around it. Please feel free to access it. And now, the details are as follows. So this has been operational until last November, and we now coming up with such a platform to provide sort of a common good is nice, but we also do research with it. So what we have done a beta phase for the last season, and for the so sort of rewinding, looking retrospectively, and we have done now the real-time evaluation for the last season that is just over, where we looked at a bunch of indicators. If you think of respiratory diseases, there is influenza, there is the severe acute respiratory infections, there is RSV, and there is the ARI consultation. So this is the indicators we looked at for the real-time real-time task, in the beta phase, we just focused on one of the indicators, the so-called SARI, the severe acute respiratory infections. Yeah? So just as a glance on how this data looks like, look at the upper graph here on the right. So you see, this is like, you see the seasonality, but if you now compare the very last seasons to what has happened before, things look similar but very different actually. Yeah? So this makes the task here especially hard. After COVID, things are back to sort of normal but not really. So this is what makes this particularly interesting here. Yeah? And I forgot to tell you, for this real-time study, we have pre-registered everything, so we kind of put a protocol, as you know, for pharmaceutical testing, where we specify how the exact setup is and how we are going to evaluate everything in the end. Yeah? So everything has been preset, so we can't cheat. Yeah? This is the background. In case you're interested, this is still running also for the next season. You can contribute, and this is sort of telling you that there's a GitHub infrastructure behind where you can automate, if you provide a forecast, where you can automate everything, and we take it into the platform with some pull requests, and we provide infrastructure in terms of that we provide the truth data in a specific format where you have this updating over time taken into account. Yeah? So now let me quickly show you some glance of the results that we found for the two periods. So there's a green period, that's the retrospective period, so this beta phase, and I can show you some initial results for the last real-time study. So in the retrospective period, we did only KIT-only models because it's rewinding to get an idea to understand if the nowcast really make a difference for the forecasts. So the main question that we addressed is, now if you correct the latest value with the nowcast, does this actually give you better forecast if you base your forecast on such a corrected thing or not? You would hope that that's the case, yeah? But it's not so clear, and this is what we investigated, and then I show you the results for the real-time thing. I told you we are looking at the SARI indicator, so that's severe acute respiratory infections. So if you have a cold and feel that sick that you actually not only go to a doctor but go to a hospital, this is what is recorded. Yeah? That's recorded according to the so-called Sanitel system. So that's survey-based. That's sort of decisive in terms of data quality, what we are working with here. Yeah? There's other types of data, it's mandatory reporting data and so on, but here there's this so-called Sanitel system. The data is weekly and is provided by Robert Koch Institute, now even in numbers. Before it was sometimes in tables and in pictures. Yeah? And here's once again the graph. It tells you that we have a training period, a validation period, and a test period, and we have some age strata that we look at separately because there's also for RSV you are interested more actually in the younger share of the population. Yeah? All right. So here's the key challenge. The key challenge, as I told you at the beginning, is these reporting delays that we want to correct with the nowcast. So the releases on Thursday contain the data up to the previous week, but they are not complete at the beginning. And here's just on the left in the spaghetti graph, you see for some instances how severe this reporting delay is. So you have to read the graph in a Arabic way from right to the left. Maybe you are at the green point in time, so that's the 5th of November in 23. And then once you wait until the end of the reporting period, until the 7th of January, then you see the data that is coming in kind of changes the overall trend. Yeah? So this is not just a statistical exercise, but actually the whole qualitative way of how you understand the data changes. Yeah? So it changes not just just the quantity, but the trend actually, which was misspecified. And here is the share of the delays here on the right. So it tells you how much over time, not just at the dedicated time points, how much over time has been fully reported and is adding up on top within the next 4 weeks. Yeah? So if we couple now and forecasting, how much can we gain from such an approach? So what we do is we perform a nowcasting step, which is simple, you will see in a second, and then we simulate from this nowcasting each forecasting model. So just look at the graph on the left. So we do the probabilistic nowcasting, and from each path, we do forecasting for each model, and then we merge it into a common forecast distribution. This is how we approach it. And for the models, for the nowcast, we want to be very, very simple here, yeah, not to be fancy. Yeah? For the real-time study, there is time to be fancy, but here we want to illustrate nowcasting has an effect. So we just use a simple multiplication factor that we are estimating from the data to correct this time delay, and that's all, basically. Yeah? And then we use 3 types of forecasting models. There we are fancy. There's a statistical time series model. There's a gradient boosting approach that has been very successful in the recent forecasting competition. And there is some very advanced machine learning model, this MLP neural network approach, which is sort of similar in performance to large language models. Yeah? So just to have the full stretch. And we have some benchmarks, so persistence. So the next week is going to be like the last week or some historical thing while things are just as in the past, and we want to beat the benchmarks, right? And the ensemble just takes the quantized mean of the 3 main models. So just to show you at 9 dedicated time points the performance, so green is the forecast and blue is the nowcast. I apologize for the quality. I don't know, something happened with the PowerPoint, but maybe you get the idea. The peak is difficult. It's always difficult. This is not an artifact of what we are doing here. But overall, sort of towards the peak, things are performing well. And you see after the peak, we have problems, yeah? And this is even confirmed when you look at the age groups, in particular for the medium age, some models get really thrown off, and that's due to the difficulty of the task, of the type of data I showed you up front, where things are very much different now in comparison to the past. Yeah, so we do what we do is that I've just shown you dedicated time points. We do an overall estimate, evaluation in scores. And there you sort of, what this confirms is that all models beat the baselines. So these are the brown and black ones. And so that's good news, yeah, that we are beating those. And the interval coverage seems to be remarkably good. If you do this across age groups, you find more intricate things about the peculiar models. But let me maybe point to the point we were initially interested in. Do these nowcasts actually have an effect, or don't they have an effect? And this is what this graph is telling you. If you compare to the case when you knew what is the right value, that's the oracle, yeah, the score is the same. And if you discard just a recent value or take a naive approach, you use the data as it is, your forecast is performing worse. And this is across all types of models, not just in a simple statistical model or in a machine learning models, the scores are getting worse. Yeah? So the benchmark, well, the takeaway message here is use the nowcast for your forecasting task. Yeah? So I'm already over time, but let me show you that we also have done the real-time study. This is not KIT only. There is a wider range of models and a wider range of indicators. And we have the initial results that look good, apart from the double dip. And here we see this season has been a bit more well-behaved in the sense that now the AI models actually are sort of able to pick up the trends. This is sort of the impression you can get from these graphs. So general takeaways you can read yourself, and let me thank my co-authors and co-operators and acknowledge the preprint. Sorry.
So given the short amount of time, are there urgent questions? Please.
Thank you for the great talk. I was wondering, what is your opinion about integrating wastewater levels? Because there are also monitorings from SARS-CoV or influenza readings, and if that would somehow help to close the gap for hospitalization.
Thank you, that's a very good question. During COVID, this was very active, actively collected. Now it's a bit less active in the collection stage, at least as we know. There is still something ongoing. So if you have information on that and you would use that for your forecasts, you're still free to kind of add this forecast to our hub, and then we can check if there is actually some value on top of the type of data that is provided. Yeah, I didn't tell you that the data here is a particular challenge. If you compare it to COVID, there was many resources went into the data collection there, but now we are in a post-COVID era where maybe this is not so much a focus anymore, and we are struggling with the data quality much more than during COVID. So that could be a way to enhance the forecast even more. And if you have access to it, please feel free to provide forecasts and add it to the platform for the next season. We would be happy to see that and evaluate it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Great. So since you took a bit more time, I think we have to close here. Thanks again, Melanie. So in the title